But there's evidence, another study that will be in the show notes, Fang et al. In 2013, finding that rapamycin this was an animal study, but it increased triglycerides, and by quite a bit, actually. Triglycerides is one of the best predictors of heart disease, far better than LDL cholesterol is, just as a base measurement. LDL has very little or no predictive power. Triglycerides actually do. And can be quite telling with regards to heart disease risk. And wouldn't you know it, long-term rapamycin use increases triglycerides a lot. Now, one variable here that I consider to be a great irony, albeit a tragic one, when it comes to the exploration of rapamycin in longevity is what it does to muscle. Now, earlier I alluded to the muscle, and I hope that that sort of put something that I greased the skids a little bit, that this was a topic that struck a chord, because mTOR, when mTOR is turned on, it wants to promote the synthesis of proteins from the base structure amino acids. That's very relevant in muscle tissue. Thus, it's no surprise. Well, and then maybe one more variable, let me add. If you actually look at correlational evidence of human longevity, now again, I'm citing correlational evidence, but so too do the advocates of rapamycin. So I'm just using their same tools. But one of the most consistent variables that predicts longevity or correlates with longevity is muscle mass. In other words, you want muscle mass. The more muscle mass you have, the more likely it is that you're going to live a longer, healthier life, that your health span is going to be extended. When you inhibit mTOR with rapamycin, guess what you inhibit? You inhibit the muscle's ability to make muscle. There are multiple studies that show this very, very well. So there's a study by Klein, look in the show notes, that looked in animals and identified muscle atrophy from rapamycin use. And then there is some incredible human evidence that is very damning. And this is mostly out of the Flucky and Rassmussen Labs at Texas, Galveston. They're really on the front end of this and have been for decades, a couple decades at least. But finding that in humans, rapamycin use significantly blunts muscle protein synthesis. Now, this is not surprising. You must activate mTOR in order to activate muscle protein synthesis, which you must have in order to have muscle mass, certainly to gain it, but even to keep it, because you're always breaking down stuff. You need to rebuild it, at least at the same rate you're breaking it down. The more you can have that balanced in your favor as you age, the more muscle mass you're going to retain. And as the correlational evidence suggests, the longer you're going to live. So one of the most damning studies here is the one by Dickinson in 2011. And they looked at humans, had them work out, and identified a certain degree of muscle protein synthesis. And then in humans that were taking rapamycin, guess what happened? That same rate of muscle protein synthesis was all but eliminated. So you significantly blunt your muscle's ability to rebuild itself, which of course over the long term is going to result in a significant reduction in muscle mass. Now, speaking of muscle mass, that allows me to transition into another topic, which is somewhat related only because of its connection with hormones. One way to get very muscled in men or women is to have higher levels of testosterone. Now, it's a little more nuanced. It's not just straight testosterone. It can also include how sensitive or how responsive the muscle is to that testosterone. So it's not all about testosterone level, but it absolutely has an influence. Well, unfortunately, human evidence suggests that with rapamycin use, testosterone production drops. That is going to make it difficult for at least a man, certainly, even a woman, because testosterone is relevant in females as well, to have a sufficient amount of testosterone to help promote muscle gain or at least help protect the muscle from loss with aging. Now, it goes even a little further than that. In men, there's evidence to show that rapamycin inhibits spermatogenesis. Now, spermatogenesis is the kind of complicated term suggesting or touching on the gonads, the testes' ability to produce sperm, as the name suggests.